everyone, welcome back to another video and welcome back to my kitchen, where today I want to do something which I guess you could kind of call a re-minimalisation of the space. At the moment I'm kind of in a place where I feel like I miss minimalism in this room. Let me explain that thought a little bit. So for me, the kitchen should potentially be the most minimal room in the house. Now, you might be thinking, that's bonkers because there's so much stuff we keep in our kitchens. There's not only the food and grocery side of things, there's all your pots, pans, cooking stuff, plates, bowls, serving stuff. There's a lot going on here. However, as a room that tends to get quite messy quite quickly because you're cooking in here, and for us, you know, it's kind of like the through the house to get from the back to the front, and if you want to go out the back door, you know, you're constantly walking through the kitchen. It's our only room in the house with a big table, so if you sort of got a bit of a project going on, that ends up taking place in the kitchen. It's a very sort of high traffic area, even with only two of us living here. So given that it's already quite a messy space, I want to make that as easy to manage and keep on top of, keep clean, keep organised. So for me, in my head, with all of that in place, my logic is it should be the most minimal room in the home to keep it the most manageable. And I feel like I've got to a point now where I'm lacking that a little bit. You know, I've got more stuff out than I ordinarily would. I've got houseplants, it feels like, everywhere. I'm kind of at a point now where I feel like I need to scale that back. As well as other things where I feel like the way I've got stuff stored isn't functional. Annoying corner cupboard, always going to be a problem. Messy cutlery drawers and, you know, the dumping ground drawers, things like that. As well as one of these drawers, I had things in this drawer that I wanted to be easy to reach, but I've made it too heavy. It's really stiff and struggles to open. As well as, on top of all of that, this is a very small kitchen in sort of kitchen standards. One of the curses of the new build is that rooms just generally are smaller. This is it. This is the entire kitchen. This is all my worktop space. So literally this bit here is it. This sort of section over this side is all the space I've got for food. So it's fridge, freezer, and then just a very tall, narrow cupboard. That's it. And then everything else is for pots, pans, whatever. So when I say I miss minimalism, I'm starting to feel like everything is a little bit cluttered, and so I want to get on top of that today. So step one is getting everything out and seeing what we've got to deal with, and then we will decide what can stay, what can go, and then hopefully come up with more efficient systems of putting everything back in place for typically most used items and how we organise food and all of that. So join me for this journey. Let's start emptying the cupboards and see where we're at. Just realised the vast majority of our mugs are in the dishwasher, which has stopped making a noise, which suggests it's finished. I'm just waiting for it to beep at me. So this cupboard doesn't look very busy on the bottom shelf, but there should be a lot more in here. There's only one thing in our cutlery drawer that we don't use. It's a potato masher because we have to, and that's one of those things that happens when you combine two houses worth of stuff, which is what happened when Tom moved in. His is better than mine. So first thing to declutter, duplicate potato masher, unnecessary. But because we do actually use everything that's in this top drawer on the regular, it could do with a bit of a clean out, which I'll do when there's a bit less chaos going on. But for now, I'm going to leave everything in here to save me getting it out for no reason when I know this drawer is mostly fine. But it does mean I need to start a declutter pile somewhere. And I don't know where because I've made a big mess. So we'll see. I haven't really got a very good solution for this. I know loads of people have those things that you can pull out and it all kind of works well. Am I willing to spend loads of money on sorting this out? Probably not, when the solution should just be to have less stuff in it, and that will be better. So wish me luck with this last cupboard to empty. My next thing I'm going to declutter that I don't even need to think about, I don't need to put it on any piles, is this little cake stand. I have 2 cake stands and honestly they literally just come out for my birthday every year. That's the only time they come out. From what I've learned from the last few years is I always over prepare food for parties and things. There's always way too much, and so having one less thing to fill will probably help with that. But also I only ever want sort of one feature on a birthday table, and that is the birthday cake. And I have also got sort of 3-tier cake stands or sandwich stands, kind of like afternoon tea ones. So it's quite nice to have the symmetry of those two with the cake on the stand in the middle. And this doesn't really fit with everything else, so I feel like by decluttering this, it's one less thing to keep and it will stop me making more food and cake than is necessarily needed. So straight to the declutter pile with this one. And so now we have got all of this madness from my slow cooker here all the way around to, hold on, those bits in the corner with my blender over there. And then I've also filled the table as well. So there's plenty of stuff for us to go through. So my next job is to go and grab Tom, because I will always say it, never be the person that declutters on the behalf of somebody else unless they've asked you to. So I'm not about to get rid of anything here that belongs to him that he might want to keep, and I would expect the same from him. So I'm about to go and disturb him in his music making and get him to come down here and have a look through all of these for me. And then job 2 after that, this is always the perfect opportunity for it, is to have a good clean of all your cupboards. Cupboards get bits in them, they get crumbs and stuff everywhere and dust, and when they're full of stuff they're just not the easiest to clean. So I always, whenever I do a big overhaul of the kitchen, take this as an opportunity to get all of those shelves wiped down and cleaned. I've already noticed there's a big drip down the front of my drawers that I'm sorry you had to see that, I really am. So I'm going to grab Tom, and I'll also have bits of my own that I can think through and decide whether or not to let them go. And so in a mo, I will let you know what we've decided to declutter. Welcome to the shelf of first round decluttering. So along with our duplicate potato masher, we had things like duplicate can openers, duplicate bottle openers, things like ice cube trays, so they're all going. We had these are Tom's, what do you call them? Reusable condiment bottles that have never been used, so they can go. I think this has been on my think about it for decluttering pile in just about every decluttering video in this area of the house. This is just a soup thermos with, if I remember rightly, a little spoon. I used to take soup to work, but this must be 5-6 years ago. And so that's not on properly. And so this just exists but isn't used. Oh, duplicate cheese grater, duplicate vegetable peeler. So we've managed to shrink down a few things. We've got a glass oven-proof dish here because we've got 2 others. So we've just decided to get rid of the one that is the least nice, I suppose, the one that's most worn. Same for this little oven-proof dish here. And I've also got a mixing bowl because I have 2 other mixing bowls, slightly smaller than this, I guess 2 medium-sized ones and 1 small one, and I very rarely do any baking. So I've also tried to streamline a few baking bits as well. Things like these little individual cupcake holders for transporting cupcakes, that I'm not going to use those. And I've still got a few other bits to go through. Tom's got quite a few cookbooks. He said he'd like to keep them all, but they take up, there's loads, and they take up a lot of space down here, and we have plenty of space on our bookshelves upstairs, so we're going to relocate those. And I know people say, you know, you're just moving stuff around, you're not actually solving the problem, but in this case that feels like there's an empty bookshelf, there's something we want to keep that's taking up too much space in the kitchen, so that seems, in my head, like a solution. Tom had a few mugs which he likes but hasn't decluttered, but he said I put them in the ugly cupboard, which is a little bit true. All the sort of mismatchy items go in that top cupboard. And I have bits in there, he had bits in there, and yes, he's right. I do have an ugly cupboard. Things that don't match everything else. It's like I hide them away for like the times when I might want them. Like they're not actually ugly items because, you know, we wouldn't have bought them if they were. But because they don't match, they don't go anywhere else. So that is still going to be the ugly cupboard probably, because there's still a few bits that I know need to go up away there. But Tom had 3 mugs that he likes. He doesn't use very often because we always just go for our everyday ones, but he says he's going to take them to work and just have them as his work mugs. So as another way of just, we're still kind of keeping something, just repurposing it elsewhere. So that kind of works for us as well. And with everything we are decluttering, depending on its quality and condition, we will be sending first off photos of bits that might be able to be reused to both sides of our family, and if anyone wants it, they're more than welcome to it. And then we will look at other ways of decluttering, whether we do a car boot. We don't know if we necessarily want to do a car boot. Now the weather is much colder, we've kind of missed our window, and I feel like I do that pretty much every year. I go through sort of a decluttering phase in autumn, winter, and then I'm left with stuff that I'm like, well, it's too nice to just throw out, but I really don't want to do a car boot. And it's sort of like little bits, like things you're not going to put on Marketplace, things you're not going to put on Vinted, things like that. So we will see if maybe it'll be stuff we can donate if the condition is good enough and actually will provide some value to somebody. So my next job is now to clean out the cupboards, and then I'll start putting bits back in what I hope is a more efficient way. And usually during that time when I've done that before, I come across, if you like, my second round of declutter items when I'm trying to make them fit and work, and I sort of start to ask myself, if it doesn't fit and work, like how much do I really need this? And we'll go from there. So it's cleaning cupboards next. Okie dokie, we're all clean now. And so I'm going to start putting things away to make a bit of space to then look at food stuff. I think for the most part, food stuff is going to be, we keep most of it and it just needs a bit of a clean and a tidy and a reorganise, because we're generally pretty good with food in that we only buy what we need for our meals that week and it tends to get used up. So there may only be a couple of little bits that might need to go. So one thing I've done is I've just used my old blender box, which was in the cupboard. I do like to keep a box. I don't really know why. Something my dad drilled into me, like if you ever move, you'll want the box, but never mind. So I've got this box and the space next to my spiralizer, and so I've just put some baking bits in here because I don't bake a lot. In fact, I would say I bake rarely, but there is the occasion. And so these are just a few of the bits I might need, like my measuring cups, rolling pin, and things like that. So I've popped those in there so I can pop those towards the back of that awkward cupboard so they are a little bit more out of the way. And then that's one thing done. So along with those, there's plenty of bits and bobs that I'm going to put away and find a new home for. The ugly cupboard, and actually it's been quite useful for things not just mugs, but anything that is actually useful and purposeful and things we want to keep, but just, you know, as I said, they don't fit the vibe. We really shouldn't call it the ugly cupboard, but I think as long as it's only the one small cupboard that's got these sorts of out the way bits, that's not too bad. So that is still there. Our stack of pans isn't the best. In fact, it's one of the things that Tom and I have discussed it's something we need to invest in together and get a new set. They are all from completely mismatched sets and they are well used is probably the best way to describe them. And I think we are, between us, sort of overdue a new set. Up in this cupboard, now this might seem like the complete opposite of minimalism, and actually it's probably one of those things where I am leaning away from it slightly. If I just grab this here. This is a crockery set that I'm not sure when it's from actually. I don't know if it was like quite big in the 80s or if it's even earlier than that. But my parents had this when I was growing up, and it's called Eternal Bow, and it's nothing fancy, it's nothing special, it's all sort of, I want to say porcelain, if that's the right word. Doesn't tell me, but it was by the Johnson brothers. It's called Eternal Bow, and it's, I think, a set everyone had, it seemed, when I was growing up. So my parents had it, my mum's best friend from my childhood had it, one of my aunties had it. It was very common, so don't think like it's anything fancy, but I love this pattern. And with me trying to move away from, I guess what you'd call the strict minimal aesthetic, like everything being like clean, white, plain. For me, that's not how I view minimalism. I like to have less stuff, admittedly, and keep spaces sort of clear and clutter-free, but that doesn't mean everything has to be plain and white. And that was kind of the vibe I was going for when I bought my house 6 years ago, and I had to sort of get everything for myself with the, you know, the plain white IKEA plates and bowls and cups and everything. And I don't intend to have those forever, but at the moment they're working as a full set for me, and I will continue to get the wear out of them. But when I reach the point where I'm starting to feel like they're old and worn, and actually it is time for a fresh set, not sort of jumping ahead and being wasteful and getting rid of something that's perfectly fine, this is where I'm heading. So let me pop this one back in the cupboard. This is the gravy boat. And this all started because my mum was getting rid of her teacups. So all she had left, aside from a couple of plates from the set, and bearing in mind she had pretty much the whole collection as far as I can remember, and she decluttered bits over the years because it became outdated. As you can see, it's not a sort of a modern thing. But when she was going to get rid of the teacups, I stopped her. I said, no, you can't, I want them, because I love a teacup and a saucer. I absolutely adore that, and I drink out of these. I have my cup of tea out of these every single day. So even just since they've been with me, which is about a year and a quarter, they have definitely had their use. And obviously these have come from years and years past. These are, some of them are older than me, and so I wanted to keep them, and I love them. And it's definitely the sort of country kitchen vibe I'm trying to tilt towards, you know, whilst in a modern house, which is not easy. And so this is what I'm working towards. So I've picked up little bits. Different family members have decluttered their versions of these as well and let me have a few bits. And I've also picked up a few mismatched bits in the charity shop. So I have managed to get myself 2 dinner plates, which will be lovely because come Christmas this year, with it being just Tom and I'll be able to, you know, use the dinner plates, use the gravy jug, use the serving bowls. So I've got sort of the bare essentials for just me and Tom, but it would be nice to eventually get up to a full set of everything, like I have my boring IKEA plates, so that when we do have people around, this is my main set. And that's where I'm heading next in terms of this. So this might seem a bit weird because I've got 2 sets of plates that I can use, and someone might say, well, why don't you put these away? I don't want to put them away. They're quite fine there. I don't need to find another place to put them, to be perfectly honest. And so that's what this is all about. So it might seem a bit weird, but this is just where I'm heading. And that's that. Now let me talk you through the drawers. So we had a whole container, in fact, I'll show you it. So we had this whole container full of, I guess what you could say is all the knives, forks and spoons that were not from our good set. So we had 1 good set and there were 6 of each knife, fork and spoon, and then all the other sets that were both our old and incomplete sets were just stuck in here and kept in that second drawer. But this was taking up so much room, so we've gone through and we've kept all of the good ones and then just sort of mixed them in with, I guess you could call them our best set. on the ground, so if they're just going to get used and worn over the years, and then when you get one that just is past its best, it can just go. And it is a bit more cluttered in just this particular drawer, but it has then meant saving space in other drawers, and this container holding all the spares was just getting a bit gross. So with that in mind, we're going to declutter these few. So we've been through, we didn't like these ones with the grey plastic handles, and then all the other ones are either bent, rusted, or things like that. So we're going to get rid of this lot. And so top drawer is a little bit messy. I've not actually cleaned through this yet, that's why it's all just chucked in, and I've not taken it all out and cleaned it. That will be another job, but I might get it in today. I might worry about that another day because I've cleaned everything else. Second drawer is just a bit neater. So rather than having a whole drawer of odd bits, I've just moved this old container into here. Luckily it just fits. That was in the scary corner cupboard. And then we've got a spare set of cooking utensils. The 2 cookbooks we actually make use of quite a bit, and as I've said, Tom's going to take his other ones upstairs. Then just your reusable kitchen stuff like baking sheets, foil, food bags, and then I had these little leftover napkins which I'm sure will be used up by Christmas because they've got little stars on. And then, you know me, I like an empty drawer or a partially empty drawer. We've got a whole drawer now just for the sieves. And then this bottom drawer is pretty much all the same, is glass containers and stuff. And as far as the drawers go, that's much better because I can now open them all. None of them are too heavy that they stick. And aside from our tea and coffee cupboard, which I'm yet to do because I've not sorted out all the tea and coffee yet, we can now move on to food. I have got a couple more bits to show you that I decluttered during that process, which I'm not surprised about. And I did empty the dishwasher so that everything is back and fits as it should. So now, food-wise, today will be a really good day to do a clear out of the fridge because, as you can see, the fridge is quite bare because it is food shop day tomorrow. So it's always good to have a clear out, but I do pretty much clear our fridge out weekly anyway. So there won't be much for me to do there, but it's, again, one of those things that whilst you're getting stuff out, you might as well give it a clean. Same for our freezer, I won't open that and let all the cold out. But as I've said, we have to contain all of our food to this zone here. So this very slim, tall cupboard here, this is the entirety of our pantry. We do work from a lot of fresh food, so most of our food for the week is in the fridge anyway, but then there's a few cupboard bits and a few freezer bits. So what I'm going to do is empty everything out and put it all on the table, and then we can see what we've got to work with. But most of this should be just stuff we keep clean out of the cupboard and just make it more functional, because at the minute everything is just all over the shop. I always start with good systems, but this is one area where I struggle to put things back the way they should. There isn't really a good solution for all of this. I've tried various things. There is always just a lot of reaching in and reaching over for the bits you need and sort of try and drop them back in and cram them back in. So I'll get all of this out and we'll have a look at what we're working with. Okay, so this is all the, if you like, pantry items that we have. So first job is to go through it all, I guess get rid of anything that's gone out of date. I'm hoping there's not too much. I tend to be quite on top of that sort of thing, but maybe with a few baking items or herbs and spices, those are the things that are likely to go out of date. Everything I'm seeing here mostly is stuff we use regularly, so I'm going to go through and have a big sort out and then we'll see what we're working with. So everything's back in the cupboards and feeling a lot more organised, and like I know where everything is. I know that the bits I want most often are easy to access and basically just doesn't waste energy when trying to get stuff out. As you probably saw when I was going through food bits, I have these bits that are no longer of any use to me for whatever reason, dates and whatnot. So they've got to go. And then I've already shown you my little bit of extra cutlery that's going to be decluttered. I've also got, oh, can you see me from there? I have got this set of pans. It's like a steamer set, but we never really steam anything. So that's kind of taking up a lot of space for something we don't use. And then I think other than that, the only other things I am decluttering is a mug. And some of you, if you've been around a long time, may remember this. I got a nut milk bag probably 5 years ago, used it once, realised that wasn't a hobby for me, making my own nut milk, as with many of the hobbies that I didn't see through, so that can go as well. And so there is only a couple of things I have left to do. The first is just to have a clean of the fridge freezer, just to make sure it's nice and tidy and hygienic. And I don't think there's anything in there that's expired, as I say, I keep on top of that. The only other major thing for me to do is, as I said, I want to make the space feel less cluttered in terms of what is left out. I've kind of had a bit of a more relaxed approach over the last few months, and it has meant stuff has ended up on counters, and as I said, in that regard, I really miss minimalism. There's too many plants, there's too much stuff. And I also want to rethink how I have the table laid out, so I'm going to look into that as well. And we are very quickly losing daylight hours. It's only 4:20, but because of the time of year, it's now getting dark, lights are on. And so to give you the full effect, I'm not going to rush this now, so I'll spend a bit of time now myself off camera, getting everything how I want it. So I'll check in with you in the morning for a last look around to see what I've done, and hopefully by then it will be feeling a lot more minimal. It is now the next day, and I thought I would just share with you what I've done to make the space feel a little less cluttered. Starting with the windowsill, that was a big one for me. There were too many plants on there, too many bits and pieces on there. But actually when I removed everything and I just had our little soap dispenser, it did look a little bit odd and out of place. So I've kept one small plant there and kept the rest clear, and that does feel much better. And then over in the corner, I've still got my meals board and my pumpkin's still out because it's still autumn. And then I've moved one of my plants into that corner, although I do need to play with the angle because at the minute its leaves are just perfectly covering the meal board. And then if I walk you round a little, like so. So now, for the vast majority of this is functional. The kettle's always out, we use it all the time anyway. We've got our little phone dock here, which is always useful when you're in the kitchen and you've popped something on your phone to watch, to charge it at the same time so you don't waste your battery. Then I've got my little wax melt, which blends in quite nicely with the background, to be honest, just to make it smell nice. Still keeping one little decorative item in this little cream jug of artificial flowers. I feel like this gives a tiny bit of a country kitchen vibe, but without being too over the top. Then I'm keeping out our cream stew pot, just because that's used quite a lot regularly and it's quite a big thing to store. So I feel like through the autumn winter, whilst we're making stew regularly, I'll keep it out. It fits the rest of the room colour wise, so I don't feel too bad about having it left out, and it's got a lid, so it means nothing's going to settle in there or anything like that. So that's out and ready to use. And then when the spring summer comes around, by then I'll be ready for another sort of kitchen reset anyway, and so I can look at putting it away where I won't need to reach it all the time. And then we've just got our toaster out here, and that's always been there, it just sort of fits. And so this is the kitchen, looking and feeling a lot more minimal. It's making me feel more relaxed just having it like this. So on top of this little cupboard, which kind of is just where we store all of our glasses, nothing has changed here. And then as for the table, we've retracted it. So it is an 8-seater table, but we don't very often have all 8 seats around it unless we're hosting quite a few people, and the other 2 are actually in the living room framing my big unit. But we have had the table extended as if it were for 8 people, just having 6 chairs around it. And it does take up a lot of space. And so we've pulled it back in just to make the space look bigger around it, because the table itself is smaller, which is quite cute. I quite like that. And you can probably just see here, I've just kept these few little bits that I mentioned in a video a few weeks ago, just sort of my pumpkin, these little artificial flowers in like a mason jar. I feel like that's got a little quirky country vibe. And then I've just got a candle. We have got 2 candlesticks that are Tom's that I would really like to use, but I think that'll be more fitting when the table sort of becomes more of a winter and Christmas sort of vibe. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gave you a bit of sort of minimal kitchen inspiration, or even if you were like me and you just need a bit of a kitchen reset, if you needed to get a bit re-minimalized. And so thank you so much for watching. Give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, and subscribe if you're not already. I will see you in another video again very soon. Until next time, take care. Bye.